Joel Lightbound is the minister in charge of Canada Post. Hi, Minister. A pleasure to welcome you to our studio.
Good to be here.
Thank you very much for making the time. I wanted to start off and actually ask you, in your analysis that would have informed this decision to change the mandate, did you determine how many jobs would be lost as a consequence of the mandate change?
Well, lifting the moratoriums, which is what I've announced today, that the government will be lifting the moratorium on community mailboxes, on rural post offices, and I love to get back to it later what it means, but it's going to happen over time. I'm not in the management of Canada Post on a day-to-day basis, but it's my understanding that a lot of these changes will bring about reduction in the workforce that can happen through attrition. But that's for Canada Post to implement these changes. But I think the bottom line for me as minister responsible for Canada Post is I see a corporation that offers an essential service to Canadians, that Canadians care about, that provides a lifeline to rural, remote, Indigenous communities across the country, but that has been losing money left, right, and center over the last 5 years. It's lost $5 billion since 2018. It's lost $417 million in its last quarter. It's its worst quarter ever. And at this pace, it's losing close to $10 million a day. Canadians can't be footing the bill, forever. It needs to stop. We need to get the corporation on a stable financial footing. So that's really what's motivating the announcement we're making today.
And I do understand the economic imperative, but I think the wider context is significant as well, insofar as they're in the middle of a collective bargaining process with the union. The union, for example, in this case says that, by doing what you're doing, that lifeline you talked about to 4,000 rural post offices, that you're going to be killing that lifeline, and jobs will be lost as a consequence. That's what the union is saying.
Well, and on rural post offices, nothing could be further from the truth. To understand, the moratorium was imposed in 1994. It's got a static list that has not changed for the last 30 years. That's got close to 4,000 locations. And a lot of these, well, some of these locations used to be rural in 1994, but they're clearly not anymore, which makes it so that you'll have in certain, suburban or even urban communities, areas, well, there's a post office, and right next door or across the street, there's a pharmacy with a post office in it. So the rural moratorium prevents Canada Post from, right-sizing its operation to be more cost-efficient. I think Canadians understand that and expect us to move on this, but for rural, remote, northern Indigenous communities, they won't be impacted.
How do you know, though? You're giving them the power to make that decision on their own?
Well, no. I've asked them to give me a plan, and I will make sure that those communities are not impacted, because this is not the goal, lifting this moratorium.
So let me give you the example, or talk about the example you provided. So let's say you're living in a suburb and you've got a freestanding Canada Post office where you've got unionized employees making a fairly decent wage, versus the pharmacy that you find the Canada Post sort of location in, that pharmacy employees staff. If you close the Canada Post office there because it's cheaper, because you don't have to pay people in the pharmacy, that is by its very nature a job reduction. I understand that you're deferring to Canada Post on the management of that, but you're making a very consequential decision in the middle of a collective bargaining process involving one of this country's biggest unions.
Well, and it is a collective bargaining process that's lasted 20 months. I don't think, I think Canadians expect us and have given us a mandate to make the hard decisions, not to push them back to tomorrow or the day after tomorrow or years later. And yeah, of course, it's a hard decision. It takes political courage, but I think given the numbers, given that Canadians have had to inject $1 billion this year just to keep the lights on at Canada Post, I think it's expected from Canadians that we'll, make the tough decisions to preserve Canada Post, make sure that it's on a viable financial path, and that's exactly what we're doing today.
I think there are many Canadians who are members of unions who voted for your party as well, though, and would have expected you to meet with the union in this case, for example, given the timing of this more than once. The union said you met with them for 30 minutes last Friday. That's the extent of the consultation that you did with them. This is part and part, like what you said today is basically what the company has said about its situation. They're accusing you of kind of adopting the company's position without giving due consideration to the union. Can you respond to that?
Two things on this. Part of what I've announced today directly reflects what the union's been asking, what the union's been asking for some time, and I'll go through the two examples. For one, we're going to modernize the way we increase the price of stamps with the view of increasing the price of stamps so that it better reflects what other countries are doing across the world. That's something the union has been asking for a long time. The second thing is I've asked management to review its corporate and governance and management structure to reduce its operation, its overhead costs, and that's something the union has been asking too.
By how much?
I've asked them to provide me with a plan. I'm hoping, nothing less than 15%, probably more along the lines of 15–20%. If more, all the better, because of the financial situation. But I would also say that a lot of what we're doing right now, well, actually everything that we're doing right now is based on Commissioner Kaplan's recommendation.
The union doesn't agree with the Kaplan report,
I know the union
though, right?
doesn't agree, but they were consulted as part of the Commission's work. And I take a different view, and I might be an optimist, but I take the view that, and I hope that this can be an olive branch to the union and to management to negotiate in good faith, to bargain in light of what I've announced today, and to bargain in light of the financial situation that Canada Post is in and the importance that this institution has and that needs to be preserved for the long term.
Can you understand how the union would feel, though, like you're kind of cutting them off at the knees in the middle of this collective bargaining process? Like you're essentially saying to Canada Post, like all the things that they have asked for, the conditions that they have put forward to the union about why they can't give them, the raises they want or the conditions they want, like you agree with and you substantiate, and this is in the middle of that process, and then they feel like you didn't give them due consideration. I mean, how many times did you meet with the company versus the union?
Well, I've met with both, and my door's open to talk to the union. I'd be happy to, and I think, I recognize the work that they've done for decades to build Canada Post, and I think their work will be essential as we transform Canada Post. But at the end of the day, I have to think about, Canadian taxpayers who've been asked to foot the bill once, and if things continue the way things are, will be asked to inject billions and billions over years just to keep the lights on in Canada Post. And I think we owe Canadians better than that.
Let me ask on behalf of taxpayers then one final question,
right.
And that's about, you mentioned the management. In your statement today, you also said, the government of Canada is removing long-standing barriers to reform, but leadership and structural change from within the corporation will be essential. I know you just referenced what your expectations are. What about with the leadership itself, right? Where many of the workers who are involved in this process right now say, yes, the conditions, the context through which this organization works has definitely changed, but there is culpability at the feet of mismanagement as well in the form of mismanagement. Mm-hmm. Do you think the leadership of Canada Post can stick around? Do you trust them to put into effect what the reforms you're talking about?
Well, I'll judge by the results and by what they provide.
And that's it. Based on their economic performance so far, like, do you blame?
But I understand too, and
the conditions I get, but is it all conditions?
I understand too, and if you look at Kaplan's report, I mean, the corporation has been constrained by governmental moratoriums like the ones I'm lifting today on behalf of the government.
That Justin Trudeau government put in 10 years ago.
Well, not just that. The rural moratorium has been in place since 1994. So I think we're giving the means and the foundations on which Canada Post can build, and I'm hoping that we can build together with the union and management. And today could also be a time for renewal in that relationship, and I think Canadians expect that we as a government and that both management and the union will work together to find a path that's financially viable, and the way things are going and have been going for years just cannot go on forever.
I just have one final question for you, if you permit me on.
It was the final
I know,
question.
but then I just thought of something. You're the
question.
Minister in charge of government transformation, and
yes.
Today the parliamentary, but you're talking a lot about taxpayers. The parliamentary budget officer put forth projections that the deficit would be larger. You're in charge of basically looking at government's operation spending, right, which is a key promise of your party during the election, that you would collapse the $15 billion gap by 2028. The Prime Minister has most recently said that when it comes to public service spending, that would be done through attrition. But the PBO also has shown us that 10,000 fewer people are working for the public service this year than last, yet spending increased by $1.5 billion. Will spending actually decrease on the public service, or are you just hoping through attrition something magical happens?
Well, we'll have to wait till the budget's presented. As you know, over the summer, all departments have come up with plans in terms of expenditure review and how they can be more efficient, find some gains and efficiencies. It's under review now by the Minister of Finance, and I'm helping him in that task, but it'll have to wait until November 4th.
Do you think attrition is enough? Like, is that being honest with Canadians?
You know, I think there will be adjustments. Attrition is, you know, the objective is through attrition, but there will be adjustments. But at the same time, you know, there are other opportunities presenting. We're hiring in the Canadian Armed Forces. The defense sector will be, you know, if we are to meet our target, we'll be hiring. There, you know, there are adjustments, of course, that will happen as we focus on our core priorities.
I'm going to leave it on that note. Minister, a pleasure. Thank you for coming in.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.